guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Des and I make beauty and lifestyle videos on this channel. Today's video is going to be something that is near and dear to my heart and something that I've been struggling with for the past year and a half or so. But in case you can't tell from the title, this video is going to be all about my experience with PTSD and anxiety. Basically what I'm going to do in this video is just break down my experience, my story, where my PTSD and anxiety came from, and how I manage it now. So if you're somebody that struggles with either of these things, or if you're somebody who has had a traumatic birth, then please watch this video because my hope is that I will help somebody through talking about my experiences. But yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and hop right into the video. So my experience, like I mentioned earlier, with PTSD and anxiety came from my traumatic birth when I had my son. So prior to having my son, I never really experienced anxiety, maybe like mild anxiety that I never would have even really known it was anxiety, but I don't believe that I experienced any type of anxiety that I noticed, you know what I mean, prior to having my son. Even while I was pregnant, I didn't really have any anxiety or anything like that. I had a really good pregnancy. My pregnancy was pretty easy. I had some issues with like my pelvis and pain there, but other than that, it really was a super easy pregnancy. And like if all my pregnancies were like that, I would have so many more kids. But like I said, my experience birthing my son was completely something that you can never prepare yourself for. So I am going to share just kind of bits and pieces of my birth story with you guys. I don't want to go into too much detail just because it is very, it's like a lot to take in, and I don't want to scare anybody into not having children or anything like that, because my son is my entire world and I would go through what I went through for him a million times more. But yeah, I'm just not going to, like I said, I'm not going to go into super big detail, but basically I went into labor on June 7th, 2017. I started having contractions and all that. I didn't go to the hospital right away. I kind of hung out at home, went to my mom's, walked on the treadmill I think for a while, and just kind of tried to let labor start naturally, I guess. Finally, my contractions were getting pretty close to each other. I mean, they weren't super close, but I kind of was a little bit, I just wasn't feeling very good, and so I thought I would go into the hospital. Got to the hospital. They told me that I was not in active labor when I got there. I think I was dilated to like a 4, but I wasn't in active labor at the time. So what they told me is that they wanted me to walk the hospital, like walk around the hospital, and if I dilated any more during that time frame, then I would be admitted into the hospital. So we walked for like 2 hours around the hospital, me, my mom, and my husband, and got back to the room or whatever. They checked me and I hadn't dilated much more. I had only dilated like half a centimeter more, which wasn't enough for them to keep me. However, my blood pressure was elevated, so that got me admitted into the hospital. So I got admitted to the hospital. We stayed overnight. By the time this had happened, it was like already 7 o'clock at night. So they basically just put me in a room, told me go to sleep, and we will see where we are in the morning. So just so you guys know, I was about 8 days out from my due date at this point, so I was about 38 and a half weeks pregnant when I went into labor. During the night, I felt like I might have peed myself, or I don't know, I wasn't sure what was going on, and basically I woke up in the middle of the night with like awful contractions, like just not as bad as I got, but they were enough to make me not be able to fall back asleep. And when I got up to pee, I just realized that I was just soaked. Like there was just so much, like I said, I thought that I had maybe like peed myself or whatever. So the nurse came in to check on me probably around like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was like, hey, like I don't know if my water could have possibly broken, but I think you should probably check. So she did, and of course my water had broke. So they went ahead and moved me over to like the labor and delivery side that morning. Up to this point, it's a pretty normal birth story, but they moved me over to the room, and at that point I was just contracting like no other. Like It was every like 5 minutes. However, I was still only dilated to 4, I believe. 4 or 5. And so that was kind of frustrating because I had been contracting all night and I didn't dilate anymore. But anyways, at that point, like I said, I had been contracting for, I had been contracting for like at least 13 hours at that point. So what my doctor recommended was that I got the epidural. My goal was to not get the epidural, but my doctor said that it would probably relax my body and my body would start to naturally. So they gave me the epidural and they gave me a little bit of, I don't know what exactly it's called. I think it's like Pitocin, but it's not. I don't think they gave me Pitocin. Maybe it was. I don't know. It's kind of all a blur to me, but basically they gave me something to kind of kickstart my body to start dilating. So I dilated pretty quickly after that. I got the epidural and the medicine to start my labor around, like, it was early in the morning. It was like 7 or 8 in the morning, and I had Sawyer at like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So I mean, really, like, realistically, it wasn't that long of a wait. It felt like an eternity, but it wasn't that long of a wait. So anyways, I was able to start pushing her. I think it was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon when they finally told me, okay, you're dilated to a 10, which it took forever, but like I said, dilated to a 10, let me start pushing. I start pushing, and the nurse was kind of getting frustrated with me. Like, she kept telling me, like, hey, you keep pushing, and then once you're done pushing, you relax too much, and then he goes back up. So it was just really frustrating. Like, it just kept happening over and over and over. Finally, I got him down far enough to where they could call the doctor in. So my doctor came in, and once again, same issue. He would come down, and then they told me that it was my fault that he kept coming back up. So I was trying so hard to just like push my best, you know. I mean, you can't feel anything with an epidural, keep that in mind. So I was kind of guessing like when to push, and like I don't know really how hard I was pushing, but basically what we found out was that the cord was wrapped around Sawyer's neck. So he had the cord like this, or he had his hand like this, and the cord was wrapped around. I don't know how many times it was wrapped around, but it was wrapped around pretty good. So at that point, my doctor realized that Sawyer was pushing himself back up because he couldn't breathe when he got, you know, out of the oxygen that I was providing him. He couldn't breathe on his own because the cord was wrapped around him. So my doctor decided to use what they call the vacuum, which is basically just like this little thing that kind of like cups the baby's head, and then it like sucks. It's basically like a vacuum. So they used that, got him down pretty far, and at that point, I don't really know, like I said, this is such a blur. I really should have asked my mom or husband before I filmed, but I don't remember exactly like what happened after this, but I do know that shortly after they used the vacuum, I gave like 2 or 3 pushes and Sawyer was out. So he came out, my doctor got the cord cut. It was a little bit before I heard him cry, and it was worrying me, but he did eventually start crying. So the doctor threw my baby on my chest and found out he was 9 pounds, which is huge. And yeah, so we just kind of went on with the day. Sawyer was perfect, healthy. Everything turned out good. I was able to deliver vaginally and all of that. So that was, a blessing. But a little while later, I kind of maybe like about an hour after I delivered, I started getting some neck pain, and it was pretty brutal. So they were giving me, medicine to kind of help with the pain, and I just assumed that whenever you're pushing, you're kind of like pushed up like this, and so I just assumed that my neck was sore from like being pushed up. I think my mom or my husband was actually holding my neck up, or even I think it might have even been the nurse. So that's what I assumed it was. Let's just fast forward. My time in the hospital, I had to stay 2 nights because of my neck issue. Basically turned into this awful headache. My neck was hurting, and my upper, like I couldn't move my shoulders. I couldn't move like this. Every time I went to the bathroom, my husband had to come with me to go to the bathroom and do other things you have to do after you have a baby, which, like I said, I'm not going to go into detail about that because that's not what this video is about. But basically, my husband was having to like wait on me hand and foot, and it sucked. So Finally, they released me with the headache. Might I add, they released me in a lot of pain. Sawyer at this point and still to this day is just a healthy, perfect baby boy. He never had any issues with him at all, like never. Anyway, they released me to go home. I got home and I was just in so much pain. I couldn't even take care of Sawyer. Tommy was having to do it all on his own. I was just laying on the couch. I couldn't sit up. I had to be like laying flat. And if any of you guys have had what I had, then you will know what I'm talking about right now. You're probably already like, oh, I know what she had. So make a long story short, 2 ER trips later. The first ER trip, they tried to give me like some muscle relaxers, didn't work. Went back to the ER the next day and they finally were like, okay, well you have I don't know exactly what it's called, but basically the epidural, whenever they give it to you, basically caused my spinal fluid to drop, like the levels of my spinal fluid, it dropped. And when that happens, it makes like everything kind of drop and then you get a headache. Usually the only symptom is the headache, but I had like all the way down, like I was just so sore. So I ended up having to get what they call blood patch, which is basically where they take blood they actually took it out of my hand, take blood out of your hand, and they have to get quite a bit of blood, and then they put it back into your spine. And that causes the blood to kind of clot, and your spinal fluid goes back up to normal. My headache went away within 20 minutes of getting the blood patch. So, I mean, we came home, and the next day I was feeling much better. I had a slight headache, but I mean, I was feeling like 100% better. I was like good to go. So after that happened, I think it was the day after it happened, I had my first experience ever with a anxiety attack. So it was pretty normal night. My father-in-law was over at our house visiting, and my husband and my father-in-law were talking kind of a few feet away from me, and I was holding Sawyer, feeding him, and I laid him down into his rock and play. And the second I laid him down, I felt my throat close. Like I could physically feel my throat just close tight together, and I freaked out. I like pretty much ran, which you're not supposed to do that after you get a blood patch, but I ran to my bedroom and I told my husband, I think I'm having an allergic reaction to one of my meds, and I ran to my room, I popped a Benadryl, and I laid down on my bed and I just waited for the Benadryl to kick in, you know? This whole time I'm like hyperventilating. My heart is just racing, and I didn't recognize at the time that it was an anxiety attack. I just thought I was having an allergic reaction. So in the meantime, my husband calls my mom. She's on her way already. My husband comes into our room at the end of this bed right here, and he told me like the silliest story. And I don't want to get emotional. I don't remember what the story was, but like 3 sentences in, I was already feeling better. Like I was already like, wow, this Benadryl's kicking in, even though it wasn't the Benadryl, it was just my husband is calming my anxiety down. So after my husband tells me this story, it was just a story he made up. I don't remember what the story was, like I said, but it was like totally like a story you would make up to tell your kid or whatever. My mom walked in and she said, come on, let's go. We're going to go for a walk. So we went down for a walk down the street, and my mom struggles with anxiety and panic disorder. And so she is very familiar with, you know, the signs, the symptoms, all of that of an anxiety attack. And like I said, prior to this day, I had never experienced anxiety in my life. So I didn't know what I was experiencing. I didn't know that I even had an anxiety attack until after the fact, when I realized, wow, that was probably an anxiety attack. So my mom talked to me a lot about it, you know, calm me down even more, and I went back to life as I just went back to life as normal. So the next day I woke up, I had a cup of coffee, and I told my husband I'm gonna go use the restroom. I went to the bathroom, and this is the part that I don't want to go into too much detail, but basically I realized that something wasn't right. I told my husband, hey, something's not right. We went to my doctor, my OB, and he checked me, and he said, you're gonna have to have an emergency surgery tomorrow. Like tomorrow. I went to the doctor at like it was pretty, I mean, by the time I got into him, it was around like 1 or 2. And then he told me, hey, you're having surgery like tomorrow morning. So basically what happened was I had 4th degree tearing, and you can Google that. Do what you will with that information. I had 4th degree tearing, and I had a couple other issues as well that I'm not going to speak about. But basically, the issues that I had were very severe and very, very... they made me feel ashamed to be in my body, is the best way to put it. So I got to the hospital the next morning. The night before was awful. It was probably the worst night of my entire life because, and I'm sorry if I'm getting emotional in this video, guys. I've talked a lot about it since then, but just reliving it is very hard, and that's just a symptom of PTSD. But anyways, like I said, that night before my surgery was absolutely awful. I hated every second of that night. So the morning comes, and I remember I woke up and I was just so scared to get surgery, you know. I hate getting surgery, and I hate it even more now. I hate getting surgery. So I went into Sawyer's room, and I got him out of his crib, and I brought him into my room at the end of my bed, and I held him, and I, once again, sorry that I'm gonna just basically cry the entire video, but I held him, and I just told him, I told him that I loved him, and that I was so sorry that my body had failed me, and that I would be home later, and that I just talked to him even though he had no idea what I was saying or anything that was going on. Yeah, I just talked to him, and I just held my baby, and for whatever reason, I felt like that was gonna be the day that I died. I really did. And looking back on it now, I know it was anxiety. It was anxiety leading up to the surgery, but I didn't experience anxiety until, like I said, I was 23 years old, so I didn't even know. I didn't understand what was happening. So I left, got to the hospital, they prepped me and all that stuff. And I remember waking up from surgery, and I was just in a lot of pain. And I was angry, probably side effect of the anesthesia. I was just so mad, and I was asking for my husband, and I was asking for my dad, and I was asking for my mom. I just wanted somebody who I knew to come be with me. But everybody was trying to calm me down and get me back up, you know. But anyways, I make like the longest story in the world short. I got released, came home, and I'm okay. I mean, I survived that whole situation. It was terrifying. It was belittling. It was awful. I would not wish what I went through on my worst enemy on any day. So anyways, I went on living normally, taking care of my baby. I was stripped of my ability to breastfeed because I was on so much medication that I couldn't breastfeed. So that really bummed me out because I was so excited to breastfeed, and Sawyer was so good at it. But you know, we moved on. We formula fed, and he's perfect. Like I said, nothing has ever been wrong with my baby boy. Actually, let me back up a little bit because I didn't tell you guys how long after I had Sawyer that happened. So 5 days after I had Sawyer was when I had to have my surgery. So just so you guys know, it was 5 days. So at that point, I started the recovery process. I went about a month of not being able to really sit on my butt because I was so sore from being basically what they call the surgery if you have 4th degree tearing is vaginal reconstruction surgery. So you can take those words and interpret them to your own abilities. But yeah, I started the recovery process, and it was tough, but I just didn't really realize that I was having these issues of the PTSD and the anxiety. I didn't realize it. I just thought like, hey, I'm healing from a surgery and from, like, at the time I didn't even think of it as like a traumatic event. I was just like, I mean, I had a baby and I had some issues and I got them fixed and I'm good now, you know? No, that is just my mindset. That is the type of person I am. I'm very much so the type of person that I'm a matter-of-fact type of person. If something happens to me, okay, it happened, we're gonna move on and we're gonna live our lives type of thing. That's just the type of person I am. But there are certain situations and certain instances in life that you can't just move on. And I didn't realize that. Like I said, I didn't realize it. I don't want to get into too much detail, as I've said a million times now, but sex after that I was absolutely terrified of sex. I didn't want to have sex. I was like, never again type of a thing. And TMI, but mine and my husband's sex life now is perfectly fine. Pretty much back to normal. So if you are somebody that had 4th degree tearing and you're watching this and you're like, please tell me that it gets better, it does, I promise, I promise. And you will heal eventually, I promise. It was just a long year. At about 6 months postpartum, I saw a doctor, a different doctor. I didn't go to my doctor anymore. But I saw a new doctor, and I was so scared. I remember I was sitting in the room and I was shaking. I was literally shaking because I was like, I don't want anybody to touch me down there. I'm scared. I was terrified. The doctor walks into the room, she looks at me, she examines me, all this stuff, and she tells me, you look perfect. She's like, if I wouldn't have read your chart, I would have had no idea. I would have thought that you had a normal vaginal delivery. And so she made me just feel really, really good about myself and really good about the situation and all of that. But anyways, fast forward to now. I am 16 months almost postpartum. So about, a little over a year and a half almost. And I'm doing much better. Much better. But let me just share some of the things that made me realize that I probably had PTSD. So after I got home, to this day, I still have not used the same toilet that I realized that I had 4th degree tearing on. I don't even like to go into that bathroom. I don't like to look at that toilet. I'm terrified of it. Every time I see my doctor in town, I freeze up. I don't know what to do. My heart starts racing, all the things. There's a billboard going out of town, in my town, that has like my doctor on it and all the doctors that are at that facility. And I cannot make eye contact with that billboard or I will have an anxiety attack. It took me a long time to realize, like, hey, you're not okay, dude. Like, you need to get some help. And the longer I waited, the worse it got. So I started, like I said, I had the PTSD and all of that, but then I started getting anxiety, and I started getting it really bad. I would pretty much have anxiety all day, every day type of a thing. Then I started, because I never got treated for my anxiety, I started to get depressed. I would lay around all day and I would just kind of not be motivated to do anything. I would send Sawyer off with a grandma and I would lay in bed and feel sorry for myself all day. I've always wanted a big family. I've always wanted to have lots of kids, and the fact that I know that's probably not going to happen now it gets to me sometimes, I honestly, now that I have a baby, I don't want a bunch of kids, but the fact that I can, don't get me wrong, just so you guys know, I can have more kids. I just have to have a C-section next time, which, lots of women have C-sections, and I know that it's not a super easy recovery process, but what I went through was not either. So anyways, I can have more kids. I just don't want to go through the healing process over and over again is what I'm trying to get at. But anyways, basically now I have started to see a therapist, finally. I'm doing much better with my anxiety. I got back on birth control a few months ago, and it's really balanced out my hormones and made me feel a lot better. And like I said, I started seeing a therapist. I wouldn't say that I'm depressed anymore. I don't ever have any days where I'm like depressed anymore. And I haven't had an anxiety attack in probably 6 months. It's been a while since I've had an anxiety attack. Yeah, I have learned a lot of ways to handle it. Everybody's different. Everybody has different symptoms and different things. But I do just want to tell you guys, like, if you have been diagnosed with PTSD or anxiety, or you think you may have PTSD or anxiety or depression, please get help. Please see somebody. Please. That is my number one piece of advice to you guys. Go see your doctor. Go see a therapist. Those people are there to help you. That's the reason why they're there. That's the reason why they went to school and got their degrees. So use that to your advantage because it helps a lot. Traumatic events and things that we go through in life can debilitate us. It really can. Our minds are, they react to everything that happens in our lives. And so it's just really important that you take care of your mental health. You take care of yourself. You put yourself first. Especially if you have a baby or children, because you need to be in the best headspace for them, and for yourself. So I'm just going to share some things that have helped me along the way. When I feel like I'm getting anxiety, I always like to take deep breaths. Some people hate it, but I really, it helps for me. I just concentrate on my breathing, and when I focus on my breathing, it takes my mind off of everything else that I'm just freaking out about. I don't really get anxiety about like everyday type stuff, but I definitely get anxiety about health related stuff. I've been sick for the past couple of months, and so of course my anxiety has been a little bit worse than usual. And I get anxiety when I am reminded of my traumatic event, which is pretty much every day. Like when I look at my baby, I can sometimes be reminded of it. If I have to go in my bathroom for whatever reason, I am reminded of it. If I'm going out of town and I see the billboard, I am reminded of it. If I go and talk to my therapist, I'm reminded of it. But it's just a part of my life that happened, and I have to learn how to live with knowing that happened, and I have to learn to accept it. And that is what I've been working on, is accepting that this is who I am, and the things that I've gone through in life makes me the person that I am. And as hard as everything was, and as difficult as the last year and a half has been, I would choose my son every time, He's worth it. I love him with all of my heart, and he's everything. Like, he's my entire life now. But yeah, guys, I know this video is super deep and super just all over the place. I know that I didn't really think about it. I just sat down and filmed. But I thought that it would be I just thought it would be so much more real and raw if I just sat down and talked to you guys about it, instead of having out a written thing and going off of that. I didn't think that would be as genuine, I guess. But yeah, I plan on just coming out with some more anxiety, PTSD related videos as I move along further in my therapy and stuff. My number one piece of advice to you, if you are struggling or you think you might be struggling with PTSD or anxiety or depression, please go see somebody. Please go see your doctor. Please make an appointment with a therapist, because like I said, they're there to help you. And once again, if you have PTSD or any of the things that I've talked about, try and remind yourself and remember that your diagnosis, your PTSD, your anxiety, your depression, it doesn't define who you are. You are an amazing human being. You are an amazing person, despite of what you've been through and despite of the tricks that your mind plays on you. Remember that you are perfect the way that you are, and remember that all of these things you can work through. You can find things that help you and things that just make it better. Find some supportive people to talk to. A therapist would be one, but if you are just completely against that, talk to your friends about it. Talk about it. Really, talk about it, because it makes you feel a lot better. And you would be surprised how many people are struggling with it as well. But yeah, guys, I think that is where I'm going to end today's video. It's going to be a long one, but I did just want to share my story with PTSD, anxiety, and a little bit of depression, because it's a big part of my life, and it's a big part of a lot of people's life. I'm probably going to be talking about this subject again in the future, like I said, as I progress through my therapy. If there are any questions you guys have, please ask me in the comments. I will be more than glad to respond back. And if you know me personally and you're watching this video and you're struggling as well, please feel free to reach out to me, and I would be more than willing to talk to you and help you in any way that I can. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for sticking with me through this video. That is all that I'm going to talk about for today, but I will see you in my next video, guys. Bye.